In the gentle embrace of twilight, when the world seemed to hold its breath between day and night, there was a village nestled by the whispering fields of France. It was a time when the golden hues of the setting sun painted the earth with a soft, comforting glow, and the scent of lavender hung effortlessly in the air. In this tranquil setting lived a young man named Lucien. His hands were calloused from tending to his family's farm, yet his heart danced with dreams of adventure beyond those pastoral lands. Lucien Blaise was a man of simple pleasures. He cherished the songs of the cicadas at dusk and the gentle lull of the river that wove its way through the village. But beneath the placid surface lay a fire, a restless yearning that could not be quelled by the routine of farm life alone. Tales of distant lands and valiant heroes, chiseled into the legend by time, spoke to him with a voice both seductive and compelling. Lucien longed to be a part of such stories, to wield a sword with courage and nobility. The echo of war drums, however, would unravel his quiet village life. News spread with the swiftness of a summer storm about tensions that had congealed into a conflict grand in its scale, stretching like shadows across the continents. With a sense of purpose veiled in youthful ignorance, Lucien enlisted, driven by an idealistic fervor and the call of patriotism. The First World War was his gateway. It beckoned him with promises of glory and heroism. Soon, Lucien found himself clad in the uniform of the French infantry, his rifle an unfamiliar weight, yet a symbol of his new identity. His comrades were a mosaic of faces, some etched with fear, others with an unyielding resolve. Together they journeyed to the front lines, a disparate band united by fate and duty. Their days were filled with the relentless march of boots, the clanking of equipment, and the drone of optimistic chatter that masked their trepidation. However, the fields which Lucien had once known to be scented with ripening grain now bore a foreboding presence. The ominous silhouettes of trenches and the distant thunder of artillery were stark reminders of the world he had willingly stepped into. Then came the Battle of the Marne. It was the inaugural baptism by fire that carved itself indelibly into Lucien's memories. The sky was a tapestry of gunfire, where every flare was a fleeting brushstroke in a painting of chaos. Shells rained upon the land, tearing it apart, while soldiers sprinted into the fray, their battle cries swallowed by the cacophony of war. As daylight faded into the shadows of night, Lucien crouched in the mud-filled trench, gripping his rifle tightly. Around him, the cries of wounded men echoed with haunting resonance, reminding him of the raw and untamed nature of war. This was a far cry from the tales of valor he had imagined. It was raw, relentless, and consuming. Yet Lucien persisted, fueled by camaraderie and the instinctual urge to survive. The battlefield became his world, each skirmish a defining moment where courage intertwined with fear. He learned to move with the rhythm of the battlefield, to distinguish between the whistle of incoming artillery and the chatter of machine guns. He was a soldier now, not by choice but by necessity. As the night yielded to dawn and the smoke cleared, the landscape revealed its scars. Lucien felt a heaviness settle upon him, a creeping invasion of the mind unknown to him before. The faces of fallen friends haunted his dreams, their eyes pleading for solace from a place he could not reach. But Lucien continued, one battle at a time, his heart a solitary drum, holding the cadence amidst the symphony of war. The days rolled into weeks, and the Marne was left behind, a chapter etched in Lucien's soul. The horizon of his existence now stretched from trench to trench, an endless cycle of anticipation and dread. His uniform became a second skin, stained with the earth and wearied by the persistent onslaught of rain. The promises of quick victories whispered at the onset of the war were buried beneath layers of mud and the reality of attrition. Lucien's journey carried him next to Ypres in Belgium, a name that would forever echo in his mind with the resonance of despair. It was a landscape shrouded in mist and mystery, where the ground itself seemed to tremble with the distant reverberations of artillery. Here, in the heart of what would become known as the salient, Lucien and his comrades faced a foe as relentless as the rain, poison gas. For the first time in the annals of warfare, the air itself became a herald of death. The memory of that day burned vividly in Lucien's consciousness. The sight of a sickly green cloud creeping through the trenches was a nightmare given form. Panic unfurled among the soldiers, an insidious beast that set hearts pounding and feet scrambling. Lucien fumbled for his gas mask with trembling hands, the acrid scent of chlorine clawing at his senses. Despite the chaos, Lucien grasped the arm of Pierre, a fellow soldier whose mask had been lost in the tumult. Tugging him away from the advancing tendrils of poison, Lucien and Pierre stumbled towards an improvised shelter, their breath labouring through the filters of their masks, the hiss of the escaping gas, the cries of trapped men, the veil of death passing over those not fortunate enough to evade it, each moment stretched into eternity. The hours merged into a blur, the sun setting and rising, marking the passage of time over a world forever altered. Victory and loss intertwined in ways Lucien had never imagined, each small gain claimed from the enemy, matched by the steep price paid in lives. At night, when the stars emerged, indifferent to the suffering below, Lucien found solace in the simple act of letter writing. He wrote to his family, his words an attempt to bridge the chasm between war's harsh reality and the forgotten peace of his village. He detailed none of the horrors, masking fear with tales of camaraderie and distant hopes of returning home. Yet beneath the surface, something had shifted within him, an unfamiliar weight that he carried with him as surely as his rifle. It was the silent aftermath of Ypres, the unrelenting whisper of those tragic moments, a spectre dancing at the edge of his dreams. The routine of war continued unabated. The battles were relentless, their thunderous roars rivaled only by the cries of the wounded. As the lines of conflict shifted, Lucien's platoon moved to the Somme, a name that would ring through history with a sobering note of tragedy. Here, Lucien would face an unprecedented trial, where the promise of grand offensives was met with a grim reality of loss. The battles, one upon another, layered his soul with a melancholic resolve. Through the fog of war, Lucien persisted, a solitary figure in a tapestry of many. He was a man changed by the fire of battle and the silence of its aftermath, a soldier whose heart carried the invisible wounds of war long before the battlefield released him. Each dawn brought with it youth and sorrow entwined, and into the abyss he stepped, one foot on hope, the other on the memories of battles past. As 1916 unfurled its reluctant cloak, the war pressed heavily upon the fields of Europe. The Battle of the Somme was a colossal machine, grinding forward with a deafening clamour that reverberated through Lucien's bones. Here, in this theatre of vast armies and calamitous engagements, Lucien would come to understand the very essence of sacrifice, its relentless toll seared into his soul. The terrain of the Somme was scarred by the ceaseless exchange of artillery and infantry charges, an expanse of mud and decay where life was perched precariously on the edge of oblivion. Lucien and his compatriots found themselves in the midst of this multifaceted warfare, poised on either side of no man's land, a desolate stretch that divided two ancient foes. The offensive began with the promise of a swift victory, yet what unfolded was a tapestry of bravery unravelled by the winds of fate. On that fateful 1st of July, the dawn rose gently over the horizon, its calm a bitter irony against the approaching storm. Lucien stood in the trench, his breath steadying as the artillery barrage came to an abrupt silence, a prelude to the push toward the enemy lines. The command was given, and Lucien climbed over the parapet, joining the surge of men into the bleak expanse. The air was riven with shouts and the steady rattle of machine guns, cold as the steel that unleashed them. Each step forward was rain-soaked and treacherous, the ground threatening to pull him into its embrace. Amidst the chaos, Lucien became one with the rhythm of conflict, the dance of advancing and retreating in a macabre ballet. He witnessed comrades fall, their cries snatched by the wind, yet he pressed on, his every movement governed by instinct and survival. The sights and sounds were a cacophony of disorder, yet within him there was a singular focus to carry out his duty amidst the devastation. Over time the days blurred, each battle echoing into the next. Lucien's platoon fought valiantly, yet faced ghastly losses in men and morale. As the weather bore down with an unyielding grip, the battlefield became a mire of suffering, a quagmire where hope and despair were intertwined. During one particularly grueling engagement, Lucien was separated from his unit. With bullets piercing the air and shells shaking the earth, he found himself grounded, his vision blurred by the torrential rain and mud. Crawling through the muck, he happened upon a small crater, its sides lined with the detritus of previous encounters. There, amidst remnants of past lives, he took respite, the earth whispering with stories he dared not decode. In those moments of solitude, Lucien's thoughts drifted to Vincent, a friend from his village who had joined the same battalion earlier on. Their camaraderie was a lifeline, a vestige of civilian life in the heart of purgatory. Yet Vincent had fallen, another name etched into the ledger of sacrifice, leaving Lucien to navigate the chasm of grief that threatened to engulf him. With the turn of the season, the battle subsided, leaving behind a tapestry marred by loss and resilience. The Somme's grisly legacy was a testament to the endurance of the human spirit, even when faced with insurmountable odds. For Lucien, the aftermath lingered within, the silence of the retreat echoing with the whispers of those who had fought, fallen, and transcended into memory. Thus, Lucien returned to the trenches, his heart heavy yet determined. As winter's chill seeped into the bones of the earth, he maintained a vigil of duty and remembrance, believing that, even amidst the shadows, there was a light worth striving toward. In the quiet moments between engagements, the letters to his family became his refuge, each line a tether to the world he once knew, a glimmer of hope amidst the engulfing darkness. Winter cast its icy mantle over the Western Front, transforming the landscape into a tableau of stark, unyielding desolation. The respite from battle, though welcome, was a double-edged sword. It provided moments of stillness for Lucien, yet within that silence lurked a profound introspection, the shadows of his mind a battleground as fierce as the fields of war. As the year turned to 1917, whispers of new strategies and rumours of decisive offensives began circulating amongst the men. It was during this interlude that Lucien found himself transferred to a new sector, a stretch of line known for its fragility but also its opportunity. Arras. The Battle of Arras was orchestrated to break the stalemate, a meticulously planned assault set against the crumbling skeleton of urban desolation. The architecture of destruction loomed around them, buildings gutted and streets transformed into pathways of war. Lucien found himself amidst a surge of men, both raw recruits and veterans, bound together by a determination as brittle as the frozen earth beneath them. With the onset of spring, the offensive was launched. Under cover of darkness and the relentless breath of artillery, Lucien advanced with his battalion toward the German lines. The earth quaked underfoot, the night punctuated by flares that painted the sky in an eerie, shifting tableau. As the charge commenced, Lucien was a part of the assault on Vimy Ridge, a strategic height that promised a commanding view of the surrounding landscape. The Canadians led the way, their determination a beacon for others following in their wake. The attack was a symphony of precision and valor, each man playing his note amidst the crescendo of gunfire. Lucien, amidst the roar and turbulence, was deeply struck by the unity and resolve displayed by his allies. It was a defining moment where national boundaries dissolved into a singular cause, the pursuit of a tenuous peace delivered through the means of war. The battle raged on, the sounds of conflict a relentless thrum in Lucien's consciousness. As daylight broke and the ridge was secured, the cost became evident. The casualties lay as a testament to the fierce struggle. Each life lost a haunting reminder of the personal sacrifices entwined with the grand strategies of command. In the aftermath, Lucien wandered through the reclaimed trench system, encountering relics of the enemy's occupation, discarded uniforms, a tattered photograph, a letter never sent. These artifacts of personal history added weight to the victory, illustrating the shared humanity amidst opposing sides. During quieter moments, Lucien sat with his fellow soldiers, their conversations a mosaic of laughter and lament. They spoke of home, of fragments of normalcy captured in letters and memories, drawing comfort from the shared understanding of life beyond the barbed wire. Yet within Lucien the toll of war was mounting, a slow, insidious unspooling of the tightly woven fabric of his psyche. He concealed it beneath the veneer of duty, but the spectre of Vincent and others like him loomed large, their absence a perpetual echo. As the campaign concluded, Lucien's battalion was granted reprieve, a brief return to the rear lines for rest and recuperation. Yet even in relative safety, the grip of war tightened, its residue staining every interaction, every drawn breath. The road forward remained shrouded in uncertainty, the war's end an elusive dream beyond the horizon. Lucien, fatigued yet resolute, grasped each day with the determination to carry on, finding solace in the camaraderie of his comrades and the distant hope of returning to the peace he once knew. In the face of relentless adversity, he held on to a flicker of faith in the endurance of the human spirit, even amidst the harrowing darkness of war. As 1917 unfolded further into the quiet despair of its middle months, the war continued to cast its formidable shadow across Europe. The anticipation of change lingered in the air, whispering promises of hope amid the harsh reality of the battlefield. Lucien's soul was weary, each step carrying the weight of battles past and the uncertainty of conflicts yet to come. With summer, the focus shifted once more to Flanders, and Lucien's unit was drawn into preparations for what would become the Third Battle of Ypres, known to many as Passchendaele. The name, spoken in hushed tones among the soldiers, bore a foreboding presence, a reminder of other fields drenched in blood and woven with stories of valor and sacrifice. The initial bombardment was biblical in its ferocity, intended to quench the enemy's spirit by razing their defenses to the earth. Yet, as Lucien and his comrades soon discovered, the land itself became their fiercest foe. The incessant rain transformed the fields into a quagmire, a vast sea of mud that threatened to swallow men and machines alike. Lucien trudged through the mire alongside his fellow soldiers, each footfall a struggle against the clinging mud that sought to ensnare them. The landscape was an unmapped hellscape, a labyrinth of water-filled craters and broken ground that defied progress and direction. The cries of men and beasts, lost in its embrace, were a haunting symphony of despair. Yet amid the chaos, the men pressed on, driven by camaraderie and the inexorable tide of command. The front lines were shifted, gained and lost with each engagement, the cost measured in lives and the unwavering resolve of those who remained. It was during one such push that Lucien found himself amid an unexpected moment of solace. As his unit took refuge in a shell-pocked ridge, the surreal beauty of the surrounding chaos became momentarily still. In that fleeting pause, after the guns fell silent, a skylark ascended into the brooding sky, its song a fragile bridge of hope amidst despair. That tiny moment of beauty and normalcy struck Lucien deeply, a thread of memory tugging at the tapestry of his experiences. He was reminded of the fields of his youth, of the songs of birds echoing across an untouched horizon. In the quiet aftermath of the battle's frenzy, he found a sliver of clarity, a reminder of the simple joys he fought to protect. However, the storm of battle resumed, and the mire itself consumed all distractions. The struggle for Passchendaele became a testament to human endurance and a stark portrait of war's indiscriminate savagery. Lucien witnessed the sacrifice of friends, and the loss seeped into his bones, an aching void that threatened to unravel him. The offensive dragged on, a relentless siege that tested the limits of even the most stalwart spirits. Yet, despite the toll, Lucien held fast, driven by a stubborn perseverance and the unyielding bond forged with his comrades in arms. Their shared resolve was a beacon amid the engulfing darkness, guiding him through the mire, both physical and emotional. As the battle drew to a painful close, the ridge at Passchendaele was taken, a victory carved through sheer tenacity rather than tactical brilliance. The scars of the struggle merged with the collective history of the war, leaving an indelible imprint on those who survived. For Lucien, the end of the battle signified neither triumph nor relief, but a continuation of the journey toward an uncertain end. The shadows lingered within him, intertwining with the light of fleeting memories and enduring hope. As he prepared to move with his unit to a new sector, he carried with him the legacy of Passchendaele and a strengthened resolve to endure the trials yet to come, anchored by the belief that peace, though distant, was not beyond reach. As the sombre days of late 1917 dwindled into the more unforgiving chill of winter, a peculiar stillness descended upon the Western Front. The battles which had raged relentlessly began to yield to a cautious pause, with both sides awaiting the next turn of fate as if caught in the eye of a storm. For Lucien, each moment of relative peace was a tapestry woven with anticipation and the burden of memories that seemed unwilling to fade. Lucien found himself stationed near the quietude of the Chemin des Dames, a place etched with history and stories of valour. Here, the infamous Nivelle offensive had left its mark earlier that year, a bitter reminder of tactical miscalculations and devastating losses. Though the front was momentarily at rest, the air was tinged with the acrid scent of anticipation, a prelude to the battles expected in the year to come. It was during this wintry interlude that Lucien, along with his comrades, was engaged in the crucial work of fortification. They toiled diligently, reinforcing the trenches and preparing for the inevitable resurgence of conflict. Despite the necessary labour, the quiet moments away from direct engagement allowed Lucien to reflect and consider the pieces of his life woven between the ravages of war. During rare occasions where leisure was afforded, Lucien often visited a makeshift chapel erected at the edge of their encampment. The humble structure, built of timber and salvaged materials, was a testament to resilience, providing a haven for soldiers seeking solace amidst unending conflict. Here, Lucien found moments of introspection and a chance to gather strength away from the relentless march of duty. Within this sanctum, Lucien encountered Father Dubois, a chaplain with a gentle demeanour and a resolute spirit. Father Dubois ministered to the soldiers, offering words of comfort and facilitating a connection to the world beyond the trenches. His presence was a harbinger of hope, even as his own heart bore witness to the suffering around him. Through conversations with the chaplain, Lucien unburdened his soul, sharing stories of Vincent, of the summers by the river, and the ethereal landscape of his beloved village. In Father Dubois, Lucien found a confidant, someone who understood the profound moral complexities that weighed upon every soldier. The solace of these conversations was interrupted as the elaborate dance of war resumed. As the year turned to 1918, The German spring offensive was poised to strike with renewed ferocity, a final gamble for victory before the weight of the Allies' growing strength bore down upon them. Lucien knew that this coming storm would demand all the resolve and fortitude he had left to give. In preparation, Lucien's battalion was relocated to a sector near Saint-Quentin, where the Siegfriedstellung, or Hindenburg Line, loomed ominously in the distance. The anticipation of another great confrontation cast an unshakable shadow over the men, their spirits tested by the familiarity of dread, juxtaposed with an unyielding hope for peace. As the front line buzzed with readiness for the looming engagement, Lucien carried with him the lessons learned amidst the war's chaos, the importance of unity, the fragility of life, and the enduring power of hope. The image of the skylark's fleeting song remained with him, a metaphor for resilience amidst adversity. As Lucien steeled himself for the coming onslaught, he held fast to the desire for eventual peace, a world where the laughter from a village square and the simplicity of a quiet evening by the river would once again be his to cherish. Anchored by this hope and fortified by the bonds with his comrades, Lucien prepared to step into the next chapter of the war, his resolve firm and his spirit not yet broken. Winter relinquished its grip reluctantly, and as 1918 burgeoned into the renewed energy of spring, the German spring offensive was unleashed with a force that shook the Western Front to its very core. Lucien stood, poised on the edge of destiny as the storm broke with an intensity that defied all anticipation. The Kaiserschlacht, or Kaiser's Battle, was a desperate attempt by the Central Powers to shatter the entrenchment of Allied lines before American forces could tip the scales irreversibly. The faint light of dawn found Lucien awake in the trenches near Saint-Quentin, his breath visible in the chill morning air, the tension palpable. The hours preceding the attack were fraught with a pervasive quiet, broken only by whispered conversations and the shuffling of feet. It was as if the world held a collective breath. All was still before the tempest struck. Suddenly, the silence fractured. A devastating barrage of artillery fire erupted from the German lines, shaking the earth and carving plumes of fury into the sky. The ground trembled underfoot as soldiers huddled against the unyielding walls of their trenches, the cacophony of shells raining a metallic symphony of impending chaos. Lucien, amidst the barrage, clung to the touchstones of his existence, the warmth of a fellow soldier's glance, the memory of his family, the silent strength of Father Dubois's counsel. The assault commenced with unrelenting precision, German stormtroopers advancing swiftly through the mutilated earth, exploiting every weakness with tactical acuity. Lucien's company was ordered to repel the advancing forces, and the battlefield descended into a maelstrom of conflict. With adrenaline sharpening his senses, Lucien fought alongside his comrades, his rifle an extension of his will. The air was dense with smoke and shouts, friends and foes caught alike in the throes of battle, each moment unfurled in a blur of motion and sound, an intricate chess game played with lives, each move fraught with peril. During the melee, Lucien found himself separated yet again, the urgency of survival driving his every action. The trench lines twisted like a serpent through the landscape, a labyrinth carved by war's relentless progress. He stumbled upon a young German soldier, scarcely older than himself, both rifle barrels inadvertently crossing paths, in a moment crystallizing the essence of war's futility. In the confines of that shared instant, time stretched infinitely. Their eyes met across the dull grey of no man's land, the animosity of nations yielding to mutual recognition. Neither fired. Instead, the unspoken language of shared humanity passed between them, an understanding beyond words that transcended the orders and uniforms that marked them enemies. The moment shattered like glass upon the resumption of battle, and each was swept away on the tides of survival, divergent paths in the same ocean of turmoil. Lucien, heart pounding, returned to his battalion, the fleeting connection an indelible memory amidst the constant clamour. As the day wore on into a weary dusk, the German offensive, though formidable, began to lose its momentum. The resilience of the Allied forces, combined with strategic reinforcements and a dogged defence, blunted the advance, forcing a costly stalemate. Exhausted and battle-worn, Lucien found himself at the close of another day, the cost of victory measured in haunting absence and shattered earth. Among the surviving soldiers, there was a shared understanding that while battles were fought with rifles, wars were won with endurance and resolve. As they regrouped, Lucien sat in the quiet aftermath, the sky above a vast canopy of stars. Each flicker of light was a reminder of the constellations that remained unchanged, bearing witness to the enduring spirit of mankind, even amidst the horrors of war. Battered yet unbowed, Lucien harboured the collective strength of his companions, steeled for whatever lay ahead, carrying within him the relentless hope of a dawn untainted by the shadows of conflict. With the advent of summer 1918, the tides of war began to shift perceptibly along the Western Front. The echoes of the relentless German spring offensive still lingered, a testament to the ferocity of conflict and the endurance of young men like Lucien. The Allies, buoyed by fresh American troops and newfound strategic cohesion, prepared to turn the tables on their wearied adversaries. Among the Allied command, a strategic counterstroke was devised, an audacious plan to reclaim initiative and drive back the German lines. It was here, amidst the rolling plains of the Marne, that Lucien found himself once more positioned on the precipice of fate. The Second Battle of the Marne was unfolding, a critical juncture that promised both peril and possibility. As Lucien prepared himself for the struggle, the landscape appeared both familiar and foreign. This was the same Marne that had baptized him into the horrors of war, yet now, years later, he was a different man, tempered by experiences that had carved their stories into his very being. Julien, a faithful companion and steadfast friend since the early days of conscription, stood by his side, their bond forged in the crucible of countless battles. The morning of the counter-offensive dawned crisp and clear, the hesitant sun casting delicate fingers of light over the scarred earth. Allied forces, supported by tanks and aircraft, pivotal to the visual theatre of modern warfare, surged toward the entrenched German positions, a pictorial testament to the evolution of conflict. The clash was titanic, a symphony of engines, artillery, and close-quarter combat that roiled across the fields in waves of determination. Lucien, with Julien and the rest of his unit, moved forward under the thunderous cover of Allied guns, the air thick with the acrid taste of gunpowder and dust. The onset was swift and unforgiving, but the element of surprise and the cohesive strategy of the Allies paid dividends. In the chaos, Lucien pushed through with determined strides, bullets whispering their lethal promise overhead. The landscape shimmered with heat and movement, an endless tableau of struggle and survival. Amidst the whirlwind, the trenches, already a familiar architecture of defence and desolation, became the stage for fierce engagements. Lucien found himself in the thick of it, his rifle a constant companion as he manoeuvred through the labyrinth of the front lines. Here, no man's land was a narrow corridor of frantic exchanges, a test of both courage and conviction. In a particularly harrowing encounter, Lucien's squad came upon a fortified machine gun nest hidden among the ruins of a ravaged farmstead. Under relentless fire, the advance faltered, the urgency of the situation demanding quick and brave action. Julien, ever resourceful, concocted a plan as audacious as it was dangerous, a flanking maneuver under the cover of a creeping barrage. Together, Lucien and Julien crawled through the shadows, their movements deliberate and synchronized. Each inch gained a testament to their resolve. At the appointed moment, Julien launched the assault, a grenade finding its mark with explosive precision. The machine gun fell silent, and as the dust settled, Lucien stood by the entrance of the destroyed nest, heart pounding with the realization of their precarious triumph. As he pulled Julien to his feet, his friend's expression was one of triumph, tempered with relief, their friendship further solidified by surviving yet another ordeal. As the battle wore on, the tide of war slowly but unmistakably shifted in favor of the Allies. The German forces, though fierce, were unable to withstand the sustained pressure, their lines faltering under the combined weight of Allied tenacity and tactical acumen. As the day closed, the Second Battle of the Marne marked a pivotal moment, a turning point in the great conflict that had consumed the world. Lucien, weary yet unyielding, stood amidst the aftermath, the mass of human will and sacrifice palpable on the shifting winds. Victory was not yet complete, nor peace assured, but the path ahead glimmered with potential, the possibility of a world reborn in the aftermath of ruin. In that tenuous glow, Lucien saw a flicker of the life he yearned to reclaim, a day not marked by destruction, but by renewal and hope. Anchored by this vision, he was ready to forge onward with the relentless heart and the unyielding spirit that war had honed in him. The triumph at the Marne had invigorated the ranks of the Allied forces, the momentum gradually tilting in their favor. As summer waned into the soothing embrace of autumn 1918, Lucien found himself amidst the preparations for what was anticipated to be the culminating initiative, the 100 Days Offensive, a campaign designed to unbalance the German defenses and propel the Allies toward victory. Lucien, along with Julien and the rest of their contingent, was ordered north towards the Somme, a place haunted by memories both personal and collective. The front, long a mosaic of entrenchments and battle-scarred fields, was now poised to become the crucible of final reckoning. The Allied forces, fortified by their successes and bolstered by fresh American troops, advanced with resolve. The strategy was a coordinated thrust across various fronts, overwhelming the opposition with a combination of infantry, artillery, and mechanized support. Lucien's unit was assigned a critical role in breaching the German defences at Amiens, an epicenter of logistical significance. Amidst the dawn of the 8th day of August, known thereafter as the Black Day of the German army, the offensive commenced. The fields of the Somme were once again the stage for an elaborate ballet of tactics and tenacity. Artillery aligned in synchronized fury, the staccato rhythm of machine guns drowned by the steady advance of tanks, a new and formidable presence on the battlefield. In their approach, Lucien and his comrades swept through fields that still bore the skeletons of earlier battles. The resonance of history surrounded them, both an inspiration and a solemn reminder of the war's enduring ferocity. Lucien pressed forward, the familiarity of battle now instinctual. The combined forces moved like a tide, collaborating fluidly across national lines, each segment of the line an essential link in the broader chain of strategy. Ambushes and brief skirmishes punctuated their advance, reminding him that despite their advantage, the enemy would not yield without struggle. In a particular engagement amid the ruins of an ancient abbey near Villers-Bretonneux, Lucien's platoon faced a fierce counterattack. Encased in shadow and concealment, they defended their position with valor. Lucien found his experience carrying him forward, guiding younger soldiers through the crucible with steady commands and the calm of a seasoned veteran. It was here, among the scattered stones and remnants of sanctity, that Lucien observed an evolving aspect of warfare, camaraderie strengthened not by proximity or shared origin, but by a collective desire to see an end to the relentless grind of conflict. By his side were soldiers from different nations, unified in purpose and resilient in spirit. The offensive progressed with relentless efficiency, the impact resonating deeply within the German ranks. Cracks formed in the once formidable lines of the enemy, and for the first time the scent of true dissolution was in the air. The realization infused the Allies with renewed determination, the flicker of victory growing stronger with each gained mile. As the autumn leaves began to fall, the offensive continued to carve its path across the front. Liberation came to occupied towns and villages, the tide of war retreating like an ebbing shadow. Lucien, though his heart was burdened with the weight of fallen friends and unending nights of conflict, remained steadfast, a soldier who carried the ethos of endurance in every stride. The horizon ahead shimmered with hope. The war, though not yet concluded, offered glimpses of a world beyond its grasp, a world where shadows no longer held dominion. Lucien found solace in these dreams, drawing strength for the final push that would come to define the legacy of those final, decisive days. As they pressed onward, Lucien knew that each step closer to victory was a step toward peace, a peace built upon the foundations laid by those who had fought, bled, and given their all. In this unwavering pursuit, he held onto the promise of redemption, a return to the life and the loves waiting quietly beyond the conflict's end. As 1918 shifted towards its inevitable conclusion, the pace of the 100 Days offensive quickened. The Allies pressed their advantage, a relentless juggernaut poised to reclaim the scarred lands of northern France and Belgium. The ripples of impending change swept through the ranks, carried by a shared belief that the end was near, a belief that set the landscape of war ablaze with urgency. Lucien, a weary yet unwavering figure amidst this turning tide, found himself advancing with the Allied forces towards the Hindenburg Line, a series of formidable German defences long considered impenetrable. The breach of this stronghold would symbolize a seismic shift in the war's outcome, a blow from which the enemy would struggle to recover. The approach to the Hindenburg Line was fraught with challenges, each trench and fortification echoing with the weight of battles past. Guided by both strategy and necessity, Lucien's unit maneuvered through fields dotted with the skeletal remains of trees, the earth marred by the endless churn of artillery. The battle commenced with a ferocity matched only by its necessity. Coordinated artillery and aerial bombardments paved the way, their rhythmic onslaught a precursor to the inevitable infantry advance. Lucien, with Julien close by, steeled himself for the task ahead, the murmur of his heartbeat blending with the cadence of war around him. It was during one particularly fierce engagement that Lucien faced a moment of reckoning. As his unit moved through a section of fortified trenches, they encountered stiff resistance. The enemy had dug in, leveraging every inch of terrain in their fight to hold the line. The chaos of conflict rendered each second elastic, stretching the bounds of time and space as Lucien led the charge through the melee. Through smoke and fire, Lucien's squad made a decisive breakthrough, finding themselves amid the intricate web of fortifications. As they pressed forward, they stumbled into a hidden pocket of enemy soldiers. In the intense, close-quarters skirmish that followed, Lucien was forced into combat that felt both ancient and immediate, a reminder of the primal roots of warfare. Despite the confusion, Lucien fought with clarity, born from necessity and the tether of self-preservation. Julien, ever the stalwart companion, stood with him, their mutual understanding forged in the crucible of countless battles. Together they repulsed the attackers, emerging victorious, but with a keen awareness of the razor-thin line between life and death. The breach was successful, the Hindenburg Line penetrated. This feat of arms, achieved through courage and relentless perseverance, sent ripples of hope through the Allied ranks and shivered the confidence of the German command. In the aftermath, as the echoes of battle faded into the encroaching dusk, Lucien found himself reflecting on the dichotomy of war, a destroyer of worlds, yet a birthplace of unyielding bonds and latent heroism. The landscape, cloaked in the subdued light of twilight, whispered stories of valor and of souls who had given their all for the promise of peace. As October unfurled its leaves, painting the countryside in hues of amber and crimson, the Allies continued their inexorable advance. The spectre of defeat cast its shadow over the enemy, and desertions increased while morale faltered. For Lucien, each day carried him closer to the home he longed to see again. Yet with that longing came an undercurrent of uncertainty, an awareness that the man who might return was not the same as the boy who had left. The experiences etched upon his spirit were vast and profound, a testament to the cost of war and the resilience of those who endured it. The path to victory stretched forth, illuminated by the sacrifices of countless souls. In those final days, Lucien moved with the determination to honor their legacy and a desire to see the dawn of a world reborn from the ashes of conflict, a world where the echoes of love and laughter might once again fill the air, untainted by the dark memories of war. As the final weeks of October 1918 unfolded, the momentum of the Allied offensives intensified, casting a palpable sense of urgency through the air. The breach of the Hindenburg Line had catalyzed a series of rapid advances, and the echoes of this relentless push carried through to the Meuse-Argonne region, a final bastion of resistance where the future of Europe teetered in the balance. For Lucien, the transition to this new theatre of conflict was both daunting and surreal, a convergence of all that had transpired during the years of grueling warfare. The Meuse-Argonne offensive, one of the largest operations in history, demanded every ounce of strength and resolve from the men who fought amidst its dense forests and precarious hills. The push into the Argonne forest was a crucible, the dense foliage and rugged terrain providing ample cover for entrenched defenders. The American expeditionary forces, alongside French troops, took the lead in this complex task, their presence bolstering the Allied efforts in this decisive engagement. Lucien, now part of a French-American amalgam, marched with determination into the underbrush, the promise of finality lending weight to every step. October's chill bit at exposed skin, frost creeping across the landscape as Lucien and his unit moved under the cover of night. The initial days of the assault were marked by bitter exchanges and formidable resistance. German troops, though demoralized, were fiercely entrenched among the natural barriers of the region, their resolve fueled by desperation and survival. Amidst the cacophony of battle, machine guns spitting fire, artillery shells scattering earth, and the cries of the wounded, Lucien found solace in the rhythm of the advance. The weight of years spent embraced by the horrors of war settled on him like a cloak, conferring a steadiness that guided him through the fray. One mist-laden morning, as his company endeavored to secure a strategic ridge, Lucien encountered the visceral camaraderie that had become the lifeline for soldiers seeking fragments of humanity amid devastation. A thick fog crept through the trees, cloaking the terrain in a hushed grey shroud. The silence was ominously shattered by the sharp crack of a sniper's bullet, scattering men to ground in a desperate attempt to discern enemy positions. In the ensuing chaos, Lucien found himself alongside an American platoon, their faces unfamiliar, yet their goals synchronizing seamlessly. Together, they devised a plan to outflank the sniper's nest, utilizing the fog's cover to their advantage. Julian, resolute as ever, took the lead with Lucien at his side, their movements swift and synchronized. Beneath the muted canopy of leaves, the soldiers crept forward, tension stringing every nerve taut. As they neared the sniper's position, a sudden exchange of gunfire erupted, and Lucien watched as Julian staggered, hit by a concealed adversary's bullet. Time stretched and twisted, ensnaring Lucien in a sensory whirl. With urgency clawing at him, he dragged Julian to safety, pain and anxiety knitting his thoughts into laser focus. As the American contingent closed in on the snipers, neutralizing the threat, Lucien tended to Julien, his hands steady despite the surrounding chaos. Julien, resilient though injured, managed a smile through his labored breaths, a wordless acknowledgement of their shared journey. That bond gave Lucien the strength to rally his unit, pushing forward to secure their objective before reinforcements solidified their gains. As October slipped into November, the Meuse-Argonne operation continued to build toward its crescendo. The lines of battle wavered under the sustained pressure, the end of conflict whispering possibilities through the autumn air. For Lucien, the days were a montage of intensity and introspection as the fragile notion of peace edged closer with every mile reclaimed. While the war's closing chapter unfolded around him, Lucien held tightly to the visions of life beyond the trenches, a tapestry of hope woven with the threads of sacrifice and remembrance. Each step towards armistice was a beat in the march toward a world where war's shadow might lift, allowing the light of healing and reconciliation to shine anew. November arrived with an air of solemn anticipation, the whispers of peace growing louder with each passing day as the Meuse-Argonne offensive charged toward its climax. On the front lines, soldiers like Lucien were caught in a delicate balancing act, charged with maintaining the momentum against a faltering enemy, even as the prospect of an armistice loomed tantalizingly close. Lucien and his comrades, poised on the front near Sedan, prepared for what could be their final engagements. The air was thick with the promise of resolution, yet the reality of war remained, a persistent spectre that demanded vigilance. Each day was a test of endurance, each night a vigil against the machinations of conflict. The skies, foreboding and heavy, mirrored the haze of anticipation that shrouded the forces poised for the push towards Sedan, a strategic objective that would sever the critical railway lines supplying the German front. It was a keystone battle, one that would contribute significantly to the collapse of the enemy's operational capability. As the clocks edged toward the 11th hour, Lucien found himself amidst a landscape painted in the hues of autumn. The advance was relentless, the combined forces of French and American troops pressing forward with determined resolve. The terrain, marked by rolling hills and dense forests, presented both challenge and opportunity, each twist and turn a potential theater of conflict. In the days leading up to the armistice, the combat took on a fevered intensity, a final act of valor and desperation. The exchanges were marked by sharp skirmishes as remaining pockets of German resistance fought to maintain their footholds. Yet against the backdrop of impending defeat, their lines wavered with a growing inevitability that suffused the air. On the eve of the armistice, Lucien's company was tasked with securing a critical ridge overlooking the distant town. The mission, though fraught with danger, encapsulated the last gasps of a conflict that had scarred the world irrevocably. Under the cover of darkness, the soldiers crept forward, moving as shadows amid shadows, the weight of anticipation their constant companion. In the stillness, broken only by the murmur of distant artillery, Lucien paused to take stock of the world around him. The night was cool, the air tense with the solemn promise of change. Beside him, familiar faces bore the same mixture of hope and trepidation, each soldier a living canvas painted with the trials and triumphs of war. As dawn broke over the horizon, the sky blushing with the promise of a new day, an unexpected silence cascaded over the battlefield, a lull in the storm that signaled the approach of the end. Orders were received confirming what everyone had dared to hope. An armistice would take effect at the 11th hour on the 11th day of the 11th month. The moment arrived, suspended in fragile peace. Guns fell silent, and the echoes of conflict were swept away by the wind, leaving a profound stillness in their wake. Lucien, standing upon the ridge, gazed out at the landscape where so many dreams and sacrifices had unfurled. There, Amidst the echoes of war, a new chapter was poised to begin. For Lucien, victory was bittersweet, a culmination of years of struggle and loss, intertwined with the promise of healing and renewal. The shadows of memory lingered, an indelible part of him now, but they were tempered by the flickers of a future unburdened by the yoke of war. As the embrace of peace washed over the fields of Europe, Lucien embraced the hope carried on its wings. The music of a world healing from its own wounds played softly in the distance, calling him back to a reality where dreams could flourish once again. With resolve and quiet reflection, Lucien stepped forward, determined to be a part of the reconstruction, a builder of bridges across the chasm that war had wrought. The armistice had cast its tranquil spell over the war-torn fields of Europe, yet for Lucien, along with countless others, the journey toward normalcy was fraught with complexity. As the echoes of the last gunshots faded, a new challenge emerged: the transition from the rhythms of battle to the uncertainties of peace. The French countryside, where trenches had scarred the earth like open wounds, was slowly awakening to the possibilities of life unshackled by conflict. Lucien, still wearing the weight of his uniform, was among those who found themselves standing at the precipice of change. The end of the war was both an end and a beginning, a gateway to a future fraught with its own trials. The soldiers returned not as they had departed. Their eyes bore witness to the vast landscapes of loss and courage etched into the soil of distant lands. Among the ranks of returning men, the camaraderie formed under the shadow of adversity shone brightly, a beacon guiding them back to the lives they had left behind. Lucien's journey to his home village was both familiar and foreign. The path wound through the remnants of battlefields, gradually being reclaimed by nature. Each town and hamlet passed bore signs of war's harsh embrace, yet in the faces of those rebuilding there was a quiet resilience, the indomitable spirit of renewal flickering to life. Arriving in his village, Lucien was greeted by the tangible warmth of homecoming, a balm against the memories that lingered with persistent familiarity. The reunion was a mixture of laughter and tears, the shared relief of families reunited across the fabric of a landscape fundamentally altered by war. Yet, amidst the joy, Lucien confronted the shadows that followed him from the trenches, whispers of battles past and the faces of friends lost. It was a struggle mirrored in the eyes of many returning soldiers, each wrestling with their own ghosts, the silent burden carried in hearts worldwide. In the days that followed, Lucien sought solitude in the fields that had been his sanctuary before the world was engulfed by turmoil. The familiar scents of earth and grass were comforting reminders of simpler times, the horizon unmarked by the machinations of war. It was here that he began the process of knitting together the disparate threads of his past with the fragile fabric of peace. Engaging with community efforts, Lucien and his fellow veterans became instrumental in rebuilding not just structures, but the sense of community itself. The village school, left in disuse during the war years, was one such project. Together they worked to restore it, their dedication a testament to the future they sought to sculpt for coming generations. Among the rebuilding efforts, Lucien found a new purpose. The work was hard but satisfying. Each brick laid and beam hoisted a tangible symbol of restoration. Alongside him, Father Dubois provided guidance and spiritual support, helping the community navigate the labyrinth of loss and renewal. As part of this resurgence, Lucien took to writing, corresponding once more with friends dispersed by conflict and recalling the stories etched into his heart. The written word became a bridge, connecting the memories of war with the hope of tomorrow. With each passing day, as the shadow of war receded further into history, Lucien embraced the burgeoning sense of peace. He understood that while the wounds of the past were slow to heal, they provided the soil from which the flowers of resilience could bloom. The end of the war had birthed a world ripe with possibility, a landscape transformed by the shared dreams of soldiers and civilians alike. Lucien, standing amidst the fields of his childhood, vowed to nurture that dream, to be both keeper of the past and guardian of the future now within reach. In the gentle ebb of 1919, the first full year of peace began to weave its narrative across Europe. For Lucien, like many of his countrymen, the transition from soldier to civilian unfolded as a complex tapestry, one that was gradually colored with both the promise of renewal and the echo of past sacrifices. The Treaty of Versailles was signed in June, crystallizing the formal end of hostilities and charting a new course for the continents entangled by the Great War. As the world's leaders congregated to redraw maps and broker peace, Lucien found himself not in the halls of power, but in the fields of his village, where the resilience of ordinary people was manifesting in acts of rebuilding and reconciliation. Lucien had become a pillar within his community, his experiences offering a tacit wisdom that others sought for guidance. As he leaned into the rhythm of village life, he discovered a renewed connection to the land, the soil that had once offered sustenance and now demanded care as it was coaxed back to fertile grace. Among his duties, Lucien took part in the agricultural renewal efforts supported by the government's initiatives aimed at reviving rural economies. He worked alongside veterans and civilians alike, their shared goal, a harvest not just of crops, but of hope. Across the landscape, fields once trampled by the boots of soldiers began to flourish again under the attentive stewardship of those who understood both its fragility and fortitude. While the physical wounds of war began to fade from the land, the psychological scars lingered. Lucien was no stranger to the nightmares that sometimes invaded the quiet of the village nights, phantoms of war that clung tenaciously to those who had witnessed conflict firsthand. However, within the embrace of community and family, he found ways to navigate the turbulent waters of memory. In moments of solitude, Lucien would often wander to a particular grove, a secluded pocket of the countryside where sunlight danced through the leaves and the whisper of the wind carried the promise of peace. It was here that he engaged in the simple yet profound act of reflection and healing, fostering an internal dialogue with the memories that were his companions. The village, much like the world at large, was in a state of transformation. New practices and innovations, many developed during wartime, began to seep into everyday life. Lucien witnessed the introduction of mechanized farming equipment, the result of advances propelled by necessity. These developments allowed the community to be more productive, bridging the gap between past traditions and future potential. The local school, restored from its war-imposed dormancy, became a central hub of revitalization. Lucien, who had once been a student within its modest walls, found himself drawn to its resurgence. There, he contributed by sharing stories and experiences with the younger generation, ensuring that the lessons of camaraderie and resilience were passed along. This role, though informal, became a crucial part of his own healing, as teaching others solidified the foundation for a future liberated from the shadow of war. As 1919 drew to a close, life in the village settled into a new rhythm, pulsating with quiet determination. While challenges lay ahead, political uncertainties and economic struggles, the resolute spirit of communities like Lucien's forged a path toward a reimagined world. Lucien, standing on the threshold of this new decade, was filled with a profound appreciation for the possibilities that peace had unlocked. Emboldened by the promise of the next chapter, he looked toward the horizon with a heart that, while shaped by the embers of the past, now dared to dream anew. In this evolving landscape, he saw the hope for generations to come, a world where fields once fought over could finally yield the harvest of peace. With the dawn of the 1920s, a new era began to unfurl its potential across a Europe still bearing the unmistakable scars of war. For Lucien, the 20s were a period of introspection and renaissance, a time to reconcile with the echoes of trauma and harness the hope that had germinated in the soil of peace. The village in which Lucien lived was a microcosm of the wider transformation, its people striving to stitch together the fabric of community life from the tattered remnants left by conflict. The year 1920 heralded the introduction of innovations and social shifts that characterized this rapidly changing world. One of the substantial changes came with the implementation of improved agricultural techniques and machinery, a direct translation of wartime advancements into peacetime productivity. Tractors, once a rarity, became familiar sights in fields that had endured both growth and devastation. Lucien, astute and eager to learn, became an advocate for these changes, ensuring that his village adopted these advancements to bolster their resilience. It was amid these developments that Lucien stumbled upon a fortuitous opportunity, a program initiated to help veterans reintegrate more fully into civilian life by fostering education and entrepreneurship. Seizing this with the pragmatism of a soldier and the optimism of a dreamer, Lucien embarked on an effort to expand his knowledge of agriculture and business practices. Through night classes held in a nearby town and hands-on experience, Lucien absorbed new methodologies that bridged the gap between tradition and innovation. This pursuit not only empowered him, but also invigorated the village's collective spirit, galvanizing others to embrace the future with conviction. With time, the growth extended beyond agriculture, reflecting a broader cultural and social renaissance of the 1920s. The regeneration of art, literature, and sociology, buoyed by a new sense of freedom and liberation, permeated rural and urban environments alike. Lucien, eager to foster a sense of unity and progression, helped organize community gatherings where stories and music formed the threads of a shared fabric of hope and creativity. During one of these gatherings, Lucien met Emily, a schoolteacher with a passion for literature and the arts. Through her eyes, history and experience found new expression. Their conversations, woven among the backdrop of community dances and literary discussions, revealed subtle truths and aspirations, a blend of past reflections and future visions. As the years flowed, Emily and Lucien's companionship deepened, their entwined dreams creating a path forward. Together, they envisioned a future not just built on recovery, but flourishing in the fertile ground of peace, bearing fruit formed from empathy, understanding, and growth. By the mid-1920s, the village school not only buzzed with the energy of local children, but resonated with broader cultural currents. Emily's collaborations brought art and music to the fore, engaging the young and adults alike, fostering an environment where curiosity and exploration were celebrated. Through all this, the scars of war, while not forgotten, faded, their reminders serving as guideposts to ensure the horrors of the past were never repeated. Lucien found solace in contributing to such a narrative, a writer in his own right, scribing the history of recovery and growth one gesture at a time. In the broad strokes of the 1920s, Lucien's village stood as a testament to the power of resilience, adaptability, and community spirit. What had begun as a struggle for survival became a journey toward excellence and prosperity, a journey that mirrored Lucien's own healing and the unspoken promise that, in the ashes of war, the seeds of a brighter future lay dormant, waiting to bloom. As the latter part of the 1920s approached, the world found itself steeped in the ebullient cultural and economic exuberance known as the Roaring Twenties. Lucien, nestled within the tranquil yet progressive energies of his village, witnessed and contributed to the blossoming Renaissance sweeping across France and the broader world. The village had evolved into a vibrant tapestry of renewed optimism, knitted through enduring bonds and shared aspirations. The school, which had become a cornerstone of the community's cultural revival, played host to a variety of activities that celebrated both tradition and innovation. Under Emily's nurturing guidance, Its halls echoed with the curiosities of children eager to engage with this new world of possibilities. Meanwhile, Lucien continued to champion agricultural advancements. By leveraging state-sponsored programs aimed at modernizing rural economies, they introduced new initiatives that emphasized sustainable farming practices and the integration of technology. This not only revitalized local production, but also provided employment opportunities, drawing families to resettle in the rural heart of France, invigorating the social landscape. In the village square, newly modernized storefronts reflected both prosperity and the cultural shifts of the era. Jazz, a fresh and exciting art form, made its way across the Atlantic, infusing the local community gatherings with a lively rhythm previously unknown. Lucien and Emily found themselves enthralled by these evenings, the music a seductive bridge to a broader world unfurling beyond the horizon. However, amidst the period's flourish, history's complexities lingered. Global recoveries, particularly in post-war economies, were precarious. France, in seeking rejuvenation, experienced both triumph and tribulation as it navigated these transformative tides. International relations, colored by the echoes of colonial interests and economic dependencies, maintained a fragile equilibrium. Against this backdrop, Lucien was invited to participate in a rural delegation, a gathering of farmers and entrepreneurs tasked with representing rural France at a series of international agrarian conferences. The goal was to forge alliances, exchange knowledges, and establish trade relations crucial for maintaining the vitality of the rapidly modernizing countryside. While the endeavor was daunting, it afforded Lucien a fascinating glimpse into the convergence of cultures and ideas redefining post-war society. In Paris, where the conference was held, Lucien rubbed shoulders with individuals from various nations, each with stories as captivating as they were instructive. The conference underscored not only the challenges, but also the unparalleled opportunities for cooperation and shared prosperity. Here, Lucien observed the scale of innovation unfolding in urban environments, a dynamic counterbalance to the paced rhythm of rural life he had grown accustomed to. These exchanges redefined his perception of progress, activated not by singular ambition, but by collaboration and mutual respect. Returning to his village from the conference, Lucien bore not just new ideas, but a renewed commitment to fostering growth through community empowerment. He and Emily, invigorated by the conversations of Paris, embarked on launching an educational initiative rooted in practical skill building that targeted young adults, equipping them for both regional opportunities and the broader global economy. By nurturing local talent and understanding, Lucien endeavored to prepare the village to thrive amid the unpredictability of future decades. His actions, shared with Emily's insight, reverberated through the village, creating ripples of activity and anticipation as vibrant as the jazz that now filled its nightly air. Thus, as the 1920s neared their twilight, the village stood as a metaphor for perseverance and potential, its legacy, much like Lucien's own, born from the ashes of conflict and sculpted by the determination to weave a future where the shadows of the past served not as chains, but as guides to a brighter, freer tomorrow. The echoes of the roaring 20s had begun to settle, leaving behind a landscape brimming with both progress and a sense of cautious expectancy. As 1929 unfolded, Lucien found himself caught in a delicate dance between the fortunes of renewal and the spectre of uncertainty that loomed on the horizon. The air was tinged with prosperity, yet beneath the surface, tremors of economic instability whispered caution. Globally, the world teetered on the brink of a monumental shift. The stock market crash in October sent shockwaves across nations, marking the ominous beginning of what would soon be known as the Great Depression. The structures of economic progress were tested, and even the resilient villages of France began to feel the ripples of an economic downturn that paid no heed to borders. In Lucien's village, The community that had thrived on the shoulders of agricultural innovation and cultural resurgence faced the weight of these global tremors. Prices for crops and livestock faltered, and the trade relationships established in recent years became strained as nations turned inwards, grappling with their own uncertainties. The school, once a symbol of flourishing hope and development, now became a sanctuary and forum for discussing solutions to the increasingly pressing challenges. Emily, whose optimism remained unshaken, spearheaded efforts to reinforce the community's self-reliance, focusing on local resources and the cultivation of innovative, sustainable practices in farming and craftsmanship. Her efforts injected a sense of purpose amidst the encroaching shadows. Lucien, his spirit resolute, focused on strengthening the village's ties through cooperation and communal support. Under his guidance, the village established a cooperative, pooling resources and knowledge to enable collective decision-making. This initiative provided security and stability, mitigating some effects of the broader economic downturn. The cooperative became a beacon of solidarity, fostering unity and resilience that transcended immediate hardship. Through shared labor and resources, Lucien and his fellow villagers discovered that fortifying the bonds within their community provided protection against the whims of external forces. Their endeavor was emblematic of a broader realization that community resilience was key amidst the gale of a gathering storm. Beyond the village, France grappled with its own set of challenges. Politically and economically, the nation faced the reality of global interconnectedness, a realization that emphasized the need for collaboration over isolationism. Lucien, mindful of these dynamics, sought opportunities to participate in regional discussions, advocating for policies that prioritized rural resilience and sustainable development. As the Great Depression deepened its hold, Lucien and Emily's village remained a microcosm of hope amid adversity. While not untouched by the broader turmoil, their community's commitment to adaptability and innovation sustained them. In challenging times, their village became a testament to the potential of integrated efforts, their fields yielding not just crops, but lessons in perseverance and unity. The trepidation that accompanied the Great Depression revealed not only vulnerabilities, but also the indomitable strength of human spirit. As the winds of change swept through the world, Lucien held fast to the vision he and Emily shared, a future shaped not by isolation, but by the robust bonds of shared purpose and effort. Thus, as the 1930s loomed, the village, rooted in the history of reconciliation and renewal, stood ready to face the uncertainties ahead. It was a reminder that while the forces of history might challenge humanity, they also offered opportunities for expression, solidarity, and enduring connection. Lucien, who had once been molded by the harsh ravages of war, saw in these moments the possibility of outlasting even the darkest of clouds, guided by the light of unity and fellowship.